Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session on feedback in real time, crafting a continuous reporting journey. My name is Chris Durante. I am the School Engagement Manager for Schoolbox for New South Wales, ACT and New Zealand. And Anthony Mitchell is on this slide. I'll give him just a quick intro as well, and he will expand on this shortly. So he helped me and the two of us design this session together. Ant is based in Sydney, and he is on the education consulting team. And he's one of the senior education consultants. And so thanks, Ant. So I need a clicker. Just hang on a sec. All right. So what are we trying to achieve today? So today we'll explore what continuous reporting really looks like in action, the vision behind it, the everyday classroom practice, and how Schoolbox supports schools to make it work. So obviously this is a panel session. We have a panel, and here is our panel. So firstly, we have from Westbourne College in Melbourne, Michelle Monaghan, who is a junior school teacher and head of house at Westbourne. From King's Christian College in Brisbane, we've got Jared McDonald. He is the school's executive e-curriculum coordinator. And as I said, from sunny Sydney and originally from sunny Auckland,
Not so sunny.
We have Anthony Mitchell, as I said, one of our senior education consultants. Joining us a little bit later as well via video, pre-recorded, are some students from Radford College too. So they are going to weigh in and have their 2 cents on continuous reporting. So together, our panel will share their experiences, the successes, the challenges, and the lessons that they've learnt along the way. So our goal is simple: spark some new thinking about how feedback can become more meaningful, more sustainable, and more impactful in your school. So I just thought we would get on the same page together by just spending a couple of minutes around what we understand as continuous reporting in Schoolbox. So for most schools, this is a journey that will change over time. Likewise, looking across the Schoolbox schools that I've worked with, it actually looks different for everybody. Some schools might be in a planning stage. They kind of like the idea. They're putting their toe in the water to see what the temperature's like. Others, they know that they want to get there, but maybe there's some consistency of practice that they need to put in place before, going down this pathway. Some may be doing it by cohort and doing some sort of pilot that way. Others might be doing it in a particular campus. Maybe it's a senior school thing in those schools and they're going to roll it out in junior school later. And others who are saying that they're doing it might look completely different, in terms of features that they have deployed inside Schoolbox, the way they've configured things, in terms of, showing grades or showing, marks or not showing those things, using rubrics or not. It looks very different in a lot of schools. And then there's schools that have taken reporting, the idea of reporting, to the next level by using that data and having, an analytics platform in the school to report as part of that continuous journey. We have IntelliSchool as our data analytics partner, but other schools are using, Power BI and whatnot for that purpose. Let's also just spend a couple of minutes kind of reviewing that for those that in the room that this might be completely new to you, and in terms of where you're at. So the grades page, for example, subject by subject, sharing feedback via comments, grades, marks with the ability to drill down further into individual tasks and the associated feedback of each of those. We have box and whisker that you can see there in that middle graphic. The ability to, and as I was sort of saying before, well, maybe it's reporting just to staff and students. Maybe schools aren't ready for the parent part of this as well. I mentioned rubrics a minute ago, so looking at individual assessments and the level of detail that can come with rubrics. It's, really, really great education practice to deploy rubrics. You can see on that graphic as well, there's some self-assessment going on where, the setup of the task has involved, asking students to reflect on their own learning pre-marking and how they felt. What they achieved against that rubric. Rubrics can be structured in a way to, calculate marks and contribute that way too. I should have been clicking as I was going. There you go. So, marks, self-assessment, access to the task, submission history, all of these capabilities inside Schoolbox for those that are new to this. I'll let those people take the photos as they need to. Just remember that everything's recorded over the 2 days and that everything will be available to you. We can annotate work through Cami. So once again, part of the continuous reporting offering, the ability to really get deep and give really rich feedback, annotated feedback, video feedback, audio feedback across a submission that's in the system. Okay. Let's kick off the panel discussion, shall we? So, I'm going to start with you, Jared, and just a sort of a double-barrel question, if that's okay, one part without notice. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your school, and what your role is, but probably more deeply, can you talk to us about, after you do that, what motivated your school to adopt continuous reporting? How did you approach its implementation? I know that you may not have been there right at the start, but how are you, making sure staff are buying into it?
Thank you. So my name's Jared. I'm from King's Christian College on the Gold Coast. We're a multi-campus school, so we currently have 3 campuses spread across southeast Queensland. We have 5,500 students across those 3 campuses, and we're starting a 4th campus in 12 to 18 months. So we're a rapidly growing school with change all of the time. My background, my role actually, I'm Executive E-Curriculum Coordinator, which is a bit of a mouthful. What that means is I look after, the strategic intention for education technology across our campuses and the implementation of that and how that actually rolls out. So a couple of things to do there. Keeps me quite busy and on my toes, but I really love what I get the opportunity to do and the influence that I get the opportunity to have on student outcomes is probably the driver for me. Coming to your question, I want to thank those at our school, it's a team effort to do this. So I want to thank those that have gone before me and those that continue on this journey. You cannot do this with a one person driving it. It needs a whole team to be driving this, and you need everyone on board with that. The problem that it started with was around the timeliness of information. So for me, I'm a former accountant. So in accounting, they talk about the timeliness of information for decision making and change. And it rolls across to education as well, in the sense that traditional reporting cycles are biannual. By the middle of the year, you've lost a whole lot of opportunity to make change and to engage those people that should be a part of the conversation in that change. Parents and students and your wider community need to be a part of that conversation, and how do we actually make change to improve student outcomes. And that's the big goal for us, is actually just that communication pathway and keeping that communication open. How do you do it? Look, we're still figuring it out. It is definitely a journey, and we will continue on that journey. But what I would say is strategic intent is really, really important. So having a clear purpose and making sure that you communicate that effectively. We've fallen over with a couple of other things where we haven't had a clear purpose and we haven't communicated effectively, and you just end up paying for it. Continuous reporting, I feel like it's something that we have done fairly well, and I think we continue to do that fairly well because it was a clear purpose with it of what we were trying to achieve, and it aligned closely to why educators do what they do, which is actually about improving student outcomes.
Fantastic. I was worried that this session we might be not have enough content, but I think I'm going to be good. Ant, I'm going to go to you now, and a couple of things resonated. I think you were nodding your head around some of the things Jared was saying. Before you get into that, just tell us a little bit about what your role at Schoolbox is and does on a kind of weekly or fortnightly basis.
Yeah. So, like Chris said before, I'm a member of the education consultancy team. So, we are a team made up and comprised of, I don't want to say former educators because I don't think, being a teacher ever truly leaves you. But we are all from school environments. So we all come from teaching backgrounds. So I worked as a classroom teacher and as a head of faculty in the performing arts in New Zealand, across public and private schools. So our responsibility really is to take what is a large and at times fairly complex product and have conversations with, leadership, with teachers, with people who are invested in that system, and try and, apply what we know about the product, our deep product knowledge that we are required to build, and try and translate that to the goals and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve as a school, and to really embed down some of that practice that we've learnt from the work that we do with, all the schools that we've worked with. I'm looking out of the room and I can see people that I've helped implement with, that I've consulted with, and we take all of that and we try and distill it down so that you can get the best outcomes as a school.
So now to your question. What do you see as the key characteristics of a successful continuous reporting strategy at a school from your experience?
I think it always starts with those initial decisions that are made by, people in Jared's role, and in Michelle's roles. They have a vision for what they want to achieve. What is the outcome that we want at the end of this? What are we trying to actually do here? It's the parent engagement. It's the ability to intervene earlier. So it's about having a really clear set of goals. And then I think it's about having those conversations about, when it comes to Schoolbox at least, what can Schoolbox do that is going to move you towards those goals? So that's things like, our work types. Are we do we have a list of work types that are making it easy for teachers to categorise their learning so that when that is produced as, feedback or assessment outcomes, parents can easily access it in the right places, or can students filter down to that information on their grades page so that they can see the information that they're really wanting to find? It's things like that. I also think that it's about encouraging those that are going to produce that feedback to really experiment and play around with the different ways that it can be produced. So, we've looked at things like rubrics, like due work. I think Cammy's one of those things that it can be a little bit underutilised or a little bit, sort of glossed over, because they're a really important partner for us, but you don't see them around because, they're not here to sell you anything. They're a part of our product. We integrate with them directly, and, that's available to everyone. So utilising all the different tools that we have on offer to provide rich, continuous feedback, I think it's giving teachers the chance to experiment with that, play around with it, and then come back together and go, what's working, what's not, and then set out, a final determination for what things are going to look like.
Beautiful. Thanks for that detail. Which segues nice to you, Michelle. You're a teacher, and I'm interested in, what this looks like for you as a, someone further at the coalface, I suppose. So, what does a typical week or fortnight of life at school in continuous reporting mode? I mean, you may not, necessarily do something every fortnight, but I think, can you walk us through, what your regular teaching flow kind of looks like?
Sure. So I wear a couple of hats at school. So I'm assistant head of campus. We have 2 main campuses with a third coming soon. But I'm assistant head of our 3 to 6 campus, which has 17 classes. I'm also the Schoolbox, junior school representative. So I was lucky enough to have a bit of free rein with Schoolbox when it was implemented however many years ago. So it was a little bit like, they know she's an early adopter of technology, so you can just take charge of all the junior school things, which is great because I loved that. Learnt a lot through that of, how we initially set it up would probably be very different to how we've kind of massaged that to how it's landed today. We learnt a lot along the way. But my most important role is I'm also a Year 6 classroom teacher. And so those other 2 roles, take away from my main role. But really helps me inform my most important job as a Year 6 classroom teacher. And we, went along the continuous reporting journey quite early. So I would say we're sort of midpoint, because you're never probably going to get to the end of that. It's always evolving. But I feel like we're kind of a good way along the process. And we're definitely doing something with continuous reporting every fortnight, if not every week. So what that looks like in my normal practice is all of our teaching teams meet weekly for our PLC meetings, and part of those meetings every week is to have a look at, what's happening in continuous reporting in our team. So my Year 6 team, we would meet and we discuss, what have we just pushed out to parents? Is there any feedback from that? Usually not, because there's no surprises, which is, the point of continuous reporting, is that parents aren't getting that shock at the end of the semester where they're saying, what do you mean they're well below? I didn't know about that. The whole point of continuous reporting is they're informed and it's up to date along the whole process. We don't want any surprises. Their staff struggling to get things pushed out. How can we help them? Ex-staff member hasn't pushed out the last 2. How can we help them get on track? So we've got that consistency across our team. Then we're looking at, what's currently due? Do we need to change? Something we've taught in the classroom might be different. The students were further ahead than we thought. We actually need to change the assessment because we no longer need to assess that because they're quite proficient. And then looking forward to, what's coming up and how do we, prepare for that. So this is a conversation that's happening every single week in all our teams. But it's just, bubbles away. It's not sort of a big, oh my goodness, reporting. It's just part of our normal teaching and learning, our job. One thing I do is the one thing I love about Schoolbox is that ability to, I guess, export to multiple classes. So then once we're happy with assessments and things, we push them out to the whole team. So there's that consistency again. So every class is getting that assessment task pushed out. And then I guess we would then moderate and do all those other things in a team along with reporting. So it's just something that bubbles away every single week. It's not a big deal because it's not this one big thing we have to do at the end of a semester. It's just part of our practice.
Excellent, thank you. So is there an understanding amongst your teachers and staff that the workload may be associated with continuous reporting is a better pill to sort of swallow than the alternative, the crazy 3 weeks at the end of June and November?
I think when it first came in, there was what do you mean we have to do this many every fortnight or whatever it was? But I think I've personally noticed, and I think the staff would probably agree, you don't get that 2 weeks or 3 weeks at the end of a semester where your family's not allowed to talk to you, you're not allowed to go out with your friends anymore. It's report writing, no one talk to me, don't open the door. So you don't get that anymore because it's just a smaller chunk more often. But I personally think, and I think the staff would probably agree, it's much more manageable in that way because we're doing this anyway. We're giving feedback to your students, whether it's verbally in your classroom, written, you're doing it anyway, you're just, I guess, opening that up to parents. So it's really, we see it as, our reporting is a snapshot in time of a task. So our continuous reporting isn't, this is how your child's performing in all of English on this day. It's in this one task, this is how your child went. They had trouble with this area, here's how they could improve. So it's, I guess, smaller chunks along the way that I think is much more manageable for staff time-wise compared to that, end of semester. And we still definitely have end of semester things to do. We write a wellbeing pastoral comment, which I guess are more sort of time-consuming because they're really personalised and they're sort of a really important part of our reporting. And we also obviously do our end of semester grades. But it's a much smaller chunk than you would have had where everything for reporting was due at the end of the semester. So I think it's been a pretty easy sell to staff, probably not initially when they saw how many, but once they were actually doing it, actually it's great. So yeah, it's probably a lot less. Nice.
I want to get a little more granular now with this. So I guess it's a question to probably all three of you, and maybe with a slight adjustment to you, Ant, around what you're seeing schools are doing or not doing, but the types of feedback. So looking at Schoolbox as a platform, I mentioned a bunch of things before around rubrics and comments and grades and things like. What do you think is the most effective when you're giving feedback and when your students and parents are consuming that? Maybe start with you, Jared.
Yeah, I think for me, I wrote a note to say depends on who you are communicating with and what you are communicating. I guess I look at rubrics and think rubrics are giving an idea against a set criteria of performance. So they're making a judgment against a performance criteria, and that tells you something about how you've performed against that criteria. I look at comments, and I guess this was the way that they were used in practice for me, was comments were ways of improvement. How can I now take that information and move forward with it? So it's looking at, well, I'm at this level now, but I want to be at that next level, or I want to go to that next level. And that's ongoing and continuous journey. And I guess the way in which the Australian curriculum in particular is written is it's formative until that point at the end of the year. You've just got to reach that journey by the end of the year. So you've still got opportunity for improvement, and the more feedback that we can provide that's relevant to and giving you an idea of how you can improve, the more beneficial that is to you.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'll agree with all of that. I think if we give out a rubric, we give it to the students in advance so they know what we're going to be marking against, and it might be something that's a bit more project-based, or say an oral presentation, or something where we want to be very transparent on this is what we're looking for. So, we want students to be pushing themselves from that at, where they're currently at. Can they get, where do they need to get? It's very visual for them. It's sort of easy to digest. Comments we see too as actionable. So we usually give them in the more formative stage. I guess some of our view might be that by giving them a comment at the end, well, you've moved on and you're no longer teaching that, and there's nothing they can do with that. So we try and do a lot of the comments at the beginning of a unit, or when you've done some sort of formative testing. So we're telling our comments usually those sort of 3 level of, you're telling them what they can do, where they need to move to next, and then how they can go about doing that. So, I think Personally, I think the students digest the rubrics quite easily because they're looking for, what's that level? I want to get to the best level. The parents tend to digest the comments because they're, really reading, what has she said and what specifics. We don't give a lot of, I'm speaking from the prep to 6 context, just grades only, because it needs to come with something. That it's no good, I guess, giving my year 6s your above standard or well above or at or working towards, for example, if there's nothing with that to tell them anything. So ours are usually, rubric or comment. Our younger students, we moved away from giving grades throughout the terms and only keeping grades for the end of the semester. So our junior students will get comments still, they'll get rubrics, but we've sort of removed the scale. We found, can sometimes be a bit demoralising, maybe for our struggling students, if they're seeing visually all the time you're working towards your well below or whatever the scale is. So for our younger students, they're still getting the same feedback, but not as, I guess, in their face, because they're at a different level to be able to digest that. And because we know the reporting is open to parents and students, we just wanted to, I guess, be mindful of their well-being as well when we're delivering that feedback.
Can I also pick up on something that Ant said before about Cami? The feedback is not just in one mode, in the sense that I could record something. So from an accessibility point of view, it's actually thinking about, well, what does that particular student need? To think about how I actually provide that feedback to that student. So for students with diverse learning needs, you've got various different ways in which you can actually provide that feedback for them to make it accessible for them. And also with the inline grader, it allows you to actually pinpoint the areas that you're talking about. So sometimes a generic comment at the end might not allow them to really pinpoint, well, what part are you actually talking about? So I used all of the highlighting tools, all of the inline feedback that I could do to actually identify to the students what I was talking about.
I just wanted to, I think multimedia feedback is like something that it's relatively new to some teachers, the idea that it doesn't have to be written, it can be recorded. And like we heard yesterday during the keynote, we don't get a huge amount of face-to-face time with parents throughout the year. Everyone's busy, they're busy, we're busy. But imagine looking at your students' sort of feedback, and it's not just words on a page from this kind of strange figure that is trying to educate your child. It's your face, it's your voice, it's your personality in front of them, giving them that moment of, digital face-to-face, that they can start to understand the type of teacher you are, how you're trying to educate a child in your given subject. I think there's power to that as well, not just for the student, but for the parent as well. So I think, both the inline grading tool and now that we've introduced the rich text editor to feedback, you can record, you can screen capture, you can do all sorts of fun things in there now to attach that multimedia. Another thing that I think is really powerful as well, Because before, you used to be kind of locked into one grading method for an overall grade for due work, for example. So, if you're marking against a percentage, that's what you and the parent and student would see. And, a percentage is great as a teacher. You've got that granular 1 to 100. Where's that student performing? But that doesn't often translate maybe to a parent or a student as to the level of achievement that they're actually attaining. So that new dual mark type where you can mark against that granular mark internally but display a grade scale home, that working above the level, working at the level, whatever that kind of language is within your school, it just translates that for the student, for the parent to really understand, okay, that's okay. We know little Johnny's at the level here. We can encourage him, but we've got a below the level over here. That's going to be something that we want to work with him at home, or that's something we want to have a deeper discussion about. So I think that's also really important to, translate and to give parents and students as many touch points we're busy people as teachers. It's not always possible to use all these innovative tools, but where we can and we can provide that, I think it's really important.
And
brilliant.
Can I just also add, just touch on
Please.
something you said? Language is important, and I think sometimes we understand teacher talk, but our parents don't often understand. So it's actually being consistent in our language, and even from how we grade and different things like that across the school, to actually try and build that understanding for our parents, so they actually know what we're talking about and they can actually action what we're talking about and support the student that they have.
There's the if anyone has the AI tool connected within their Schoolbox instance, you don't always have to do that translation yourself. You can write in your native teacher speak, highlight that and give the AI a little prompt. Hey, could you make this a little more digestible for a parent at home who's in the middle of school pickup and making dinner, and they've got 5 minutes to digest something really quickly. Let's make that language a little bit more easily digestible. So there's tools for it as well. It doesn't have to just fall to you. As always, we're going to check what that AI outputs, and we're going to make sure we're happy for that to go home, but could save you a bit of time there.
Thanks, guys. Amazing. I'm going to move forward and bring the real experts to the panel. So, Radford College in the ACT kindly agreed to giving some student voice to this discussion and this panel. Lisa Plenty, who is just wave, Lisa, thank you. She kindly donated her time with maybe a couple of other members of her team to get some students together to give some reflection on continuous reporting. Just by context, Nexus is the name of their Schoolbox instance, so if you hear that on the recording, that's what they're talking about. And I'm just going to pose a very, very simple question to the panel, just around your favourite moment, or the moment that in this video that might resonate with you most. Wow. If you haven't ever done an exercise like that at your school, that could be something you could take forward. I'm not sure if my favourite moment was when the young girl threw her brother under the bus for being so disorganised. But there was so much gold there, and I left out so much footage that has a whole bunch of other insights. So, panel, any thoughts?
I just thought how fantastic to have student voice in a event such as this. It's normally geared towards, the adults in the room. So that was fantastic. My first thought was I'd love to do this with the students at our school, just to really get some feedback on the good, the bad and the ugly. The thing that stood out to me is really that home-school partnership, in that, Schoolbox can be that bridge when we know, at our school most two working parents, quite time poor. We're really not seeing parents as much as maybe we did previously, but, all of those conversations there were about, talking to mum and dad over the dinner table, or, why didn't you hand this in? Because the parents are connected to their learning. through, I guess, Schoolbox and having an insight into how they're going, and also loved how the students were, a lot of them spoke about how they can get better, how the feedback wasn't at the end, it was something they could action so that they could get better. So I just thought how articulate and, fabulous group of students, but really the bit that stood out is that homeschool partnership.
Thanks, Michelle.
I agree. It was really great to hear from the students. We don't have enough student voice and even enough parent voice at times, so I think it was really great. And I just want to touch on what Michelle said about, it was great to hear them talking about, I can improve, I'm getting it earlier so I can get that feedback. And I think teaching is really complex, busy and tough at times, so it's great to hear that what we do is actually making a difference and it's actually valued. We recently did a student survey, and even just some of the threads through that about that, I think is really places a lot of value on teachers, which I think is really nice to hear at times.
I might talk about just 2 points really quick. Yes, the throwing under the bus of the brother was a moment, but it also made me realise something that's happened in my family recently. My brother was recently diagnosed with dyslexia, and that's as an adult. And my parents are very attentive people. Like they are, it's not like they just didn't care. Like it just slipped under the radar. And I wonder if he'd had more continuous reporting throughout his time at school, whether that might have been something that got picked up on a little bit earlier. And some of the, challenges he faced towards university might have been mitigated much earlier. So that's quite resonant with me and, makes me reflect about my family. The other thing as well is towards the end, one of those girls said, sometimes they need a moment to digest that content because, if a teacher says it to them, it can be pretty brutal, Teachers can sometimes be rock stars to these students. Like I think about my drama teacher at school. If she'd been disappointed in one of my performances, it would have killed me. But if she'd given me a chance to, read some of that feedback, digest it first, and then have a conversation, I might have been more prepared for that conversation and know that it's not the end of the world in that moment. So, again, just want to echo, great student voice, Lisa. Those students are a testament to what you and your school do. I've been lucky enough to work with you guys on a few things, and I would encourage everyone, if I was still at a school, I'd be going back tomorrow and setting up some kind of student voice. So that was really, really cool.
Thanks, Anne. So I've got one eye on the time. I've got... have you got a mic, mate? Okay. We do, down here, yeah. So just while that is sort of going on, and I do want to give the opportunity for some questions out there. However, one little moment on that video, the student was morphing into, hey, can we have this feature request? Just while maybe a few people are thinking, okay, what I might ask of the panel, one feature in Schoolbox that could improve your life, and I'm going to ask you as well, Ant.
We talked about connection to badges. So being able to use badges and have results go to badges so that teachers can actually see how students are progressing and awarding badges to students, so you actually get kind of a portfolio look of progress.
Great.
One I was thinking about is when a student submits work, so on the class page they're normally red before, the colour red, before anything's done to it, and then the colour changes once you publish. So as a teacher, if I've published 5 out of 24, the colour sort of slowly changes to green, but it uses green for submitting as well as when I've published. But I'd love a third colour so that if I teach multiple classes, I can see quickly whether it's been submitted or whether I've got to publish. So that was one feature I thought I would love for it to come in so quickly as a staff member I could distinguish, is that students have submitted or is that I've published that one?
I'm not going to go into depth because I do get a little bit of time to talk about the roadmap internally. I think one of the things I'm most excited about, and I know that we're sort of looking at, obviously our new student participation feature is going to hopefully be a massive game changer for schools to help design assessment that meets the individual learner. I'm really, really excited about what AI looks like in that space to, bring pastoral care into the mix, to bring all the things we know about a student from all the data we can gather on them and go, look, you might want to do this very particularly for a student because that's going to lead to hopefully a better outcome. We're time poor. We, have so many students under our care. To get some of those insights delivered straight to us so we can make those adjustments really quickly and really powerfully. I think that's going to be a big game changer in education.
Excellent. Thank you, all three of you. We have a question. Is it on? What number mic is that?
5.
5.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Great.
can.
So we had our first semester of rubrics and reporting out of Schoolbox in semester 1, and we are foundation to 12 doing that. One of the things that was really interesting for us is in the junior school, where we would not normally share rubrics with the students, they all came in to the journal, which meant that our students could see it. And it was really challenging. And at that point, we had the lights on, so we had lots of pink and lots of green. We were able to mitigate that really quickly and turn it to grayscale. But one thing, which is partly a feature request, but also something for Michelle, we would love it just to say, because that for us was like, this is like a senior school space, not a junior school space. What we would love is just parents and staff. Like that could be so easily mitigated by just having one of the options, staff only, staff and students, and just have parents and staff for our junior school so that it doesn't land into those journals, because some of our kids that always, they try so hard, and we started putting the names to the kids that got those and that then felt like we heard a bit in there that felt a bit damp. I heard you mention, Michelle, that to try and mitigate that until that feature hopefully comes in. How are you managing that? Because for us, it's not really an option to dumb down the rubrics we don't put comments in there yet.
Yes, we had similar
It's tricky.
thoughts, and I think that's probably a feature that schools might sort of embrace, having just the parent option for visibility. So we did take the headings off the rubrics. So, and it might be just a small thing, but it's not, I guess, highlighting to those younger students. We have a scale sort of well above the standard, at standard, working towards a standard, and well below. But by taking those headings off, the kids could visually see they're sort of here, but that wasn't their focus in bold at the top. So that's one thing that we've done, and we've taken for the junior students, prep to 4, we've taken any type of sort of overall scale off those assessments. So they're focusing on the text of the rubric and of the comment, but realistically our younger students aren't really engaging with the assessment on Schoolbox in the way that I guess you could see the progression to the senior students where they're really focused on it. Our younger students, it's really geared towards parents in the younger grades. Yeah, I guess that's a small way that we've tried to get around that. You can use the modify participation in tasks. So if there is a student, say, on a learning plan or something that's sitting outside of, I guess, totally outside of their grade, that's another thing you can do so that there's might be a comment only and you remove the rubric or whatever you're doing. So you can, I guess, do some other things. But I guess that's what we've done so far. And I mean, realistically, all the kids know. We know, all the kids know. Calling the group the turtles or the sloths or the cheetahs, the kids know what reading group they're in. The kids could put themselves on a scale in the class for every single area. As much as we try and, I guess, hide them from that, they all know.
Thank you for your question. We are going to have to call it at this point. I'm sorry. If you want to come and chat with the panellists shortly, can you please put your hands together for our three panellists and for our students at Radford College as well. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that session. Please keep chatting about this. Please, if you want to have a chat at the strategy studio at lunchtime, we're open for that conversation as well. But we really appreciate you coming today, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.